Welcome again to the S.E.M podcast. Jack Bryce and Zach Hewlett are here again, and tonight we're joined by our friend Tyler Snow. Tyler, thanks for coming on tonight. We're excited to have you. What part of the world are you calling from today?
Up in the Tacoma, Washington area.
Tacoma. Very good. Well, we're excited to have you on the podcast. Just to give you a format reminder, we'll talk pre-mission and your decision going to Scotland and then your reaction of getting called there. Then we'll jump over the mission, talk about life since being on the mission. Then we'll go back through areas, companions, and any other memories you want to share. So I'll turn the time to you.
Okay, that sounds awesome. Um, so I grew up in Provo, Utah, and so mission was just kind of always on the board. We moved around a bunch, but Provo's where I went to high school. I had a full year and a bit, I think, after high school to kind of work and get ready, but preparation was important, and mission was always the goal. Submitted my papers, and at the time, it seemed like everybody in my stake was going to Brazil. So I thought for sure that's where I'd end up, and then ended up in Scotland, and couldn't have been more thrilled about how cool that was. And then it was just kind of this frequency bias thing. Like once you are going to go to a place, all of a sudden you realize all these people that you knew but didn't realize they'd also been to Scotland. So people in the ward and the stake, and you'd run into people at the missionary store or whatever that like, man, Scotland's so cool. I think one of my favorite things, though, before the mission was a guy that I worked with. He got called to the Philippines at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And again, because we're kind of, Utah Valley, we were working together. People would ask, like, hey, where are you guys going on your mission? And he'd be like, Philippines. And I'm like, I'm going to Scotland. And for Philippines, they're like, oh, that'll be interesting. And Scotland, they're like, oh, man, that's so cool. I've always wanted to go. So just kind of like the wow factor was super cool, and just very excited to get out and go. And that took us, let me think, September of '99 is when got on an airplane and left for the MTC in Preston, which was a good experience because my mom knew too many people at the Provo MTC, and she's like, I would definitely come and visit you at the Provo MTC. So it was God knew, he knew. So it was great to be able to have a different MTC experience outside of Provo for a bunch of reasons. The obviously the Preston MTC is beautiful, but also just getting away from kind of home and my mom to an extent too, just for fun, because I know that she would have been up there nonchalantly. Hey, I'm just here visiting my friend Travis or whoever else, and she'd go up and visit, and that got me out of there.
I had that same thought too, Tyler. Living up, I grew up in Sandy, and so it wasn't far away.
Yeah.
And I had the thought in the MTC many times, like if I was in Provo, I'd have so many temptations to just say, "Can somebody take me home, please?"
It's not that far.
It's not far.
That far. Yeah.
But different story when you're over on the other side of the world. So that's cool.
For sure.
So
I don't know if sorry, I was just going to say for you guys, like I didn't even know that people were going to other MTCs at the time. Like, so that was
no,
as much a shock as Scotland was. So it was cool. Sorry, cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, you're good. I completely agree with that too. I mean, I had a really close friend of mine who went to the Provo MTC a week before I did. And then I got my call and he was like, what? We're not going to be in the MTC together? Like he was totally gutted about it, which, I didn't have any control over that, obviously, but
right.
But that's cool. So you said September of '99, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So did you serve September '99 to September 2001? Is that right?
I got back in October. Like it switched. I don't know if you guys were maybe on your missions. We had like a 4-week transfer, and then we switched to a 6-week transfer.
Oh wow.
And so that just kind of split us up. And so like I went out with a big group. There's like I think 12 of us if I remember. And about half of us went home. Like we could either go home August or October. And I stuck around for October. And there's about half of us. But a bunch of other guys were like, hey, I want to get back into school. So
yeah,
that worked out for them. So it ended up being a month longer.
Okay, that's awesome. Love it. So take us to October of 2001. Tell us about life since you've been home from Scotland.
So maybe just like a month or two, the end of my mission. So I like got on my mission. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. I still don't, and we can talk about that in a minute. Um, but I wanted to be an engineer. I started college before the mission is in kind of an engineer, and then I got into it. And I'm like, man, I don't want to be an engineer. But I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I served around Elder and Sister Berquist for a good chunk of my mission. And it was probably a month before they went home and a couple months before I went home. We were talking to him one afternoon. He's telling us about being a physical therapist. And I'm like, holy cow, that's what I want to be. That sounds super cool. It just happened to be that he had two nephews that worked in a hospital in Provo, which is where I was going back to. He's like, hey, just look them up when you get back. I'll let them know you're coming. And so I got back beginning of October, kind of worked for my grandpa in a machine shop for a little bit, and then started volunteering at the hospital in Provo pretty soon thereafter. And then, like a month or two after that, I started working at the hospital in Provo in the physical therapy department. And then that was kind of the track. I went to it was Utah Valley, not Utah Valley University, Utah Valley State College back then. Good heavens,
UVSC, that's right.
that's right, UVSC. So I did a biology degree there. Um, and that was kind of the track for physical therapy school. But working at the hospital also introduced me to a lot of cool guys. It was just, I mean, it's Utah Valley. Everybody that worked at the hospital in that physical therapy department were all returned missionaries. Like, I think
Sure.
without exception. And everybody had been back for like a year or two. So it was really kind of a cool like environment to get back into where you kind of still have that friendship and camaraderie and everybody's kind of at the same stage of life. And met a good friend who is now, I guess, kind of my cousin-in-law because he introduced me to his cousin and we got married
Nice.
21 years ago now.
Nice. Very
So
cool.
that was super cool. And been an incredible blessing and just awesome ever since. Um, so UVSC for biology, and then physical therapy school. Um, Went to the University of Utah for physical therapy school. Because of the family in Provo, there were some family members that were not super happy about the University of Utah, uh, which was kind of fun. I had, I think I applied to like three different schools. And that was that's another story because I was a terrible procrastinator with my applications, and like every single one of them was either like overnighted, and the University of Utah actually like hand delivered the application like on the day that it was due, and my wife was like, and this was years later. She was very supportive at the time. Years later, she's like, "You did not deserve to get into any of those schools because of how bad you procrastinated." She's like, "If I was on the admission board, I wouldn't have let you in." And I'm like, that's totally fair. But we did have a pick and kind of all over the place, Wisconsin and Florida, and then University of Utah. And I remember calling up my grandpa when I got into the U, and he's like, and he'd worked at BYU for decades. And he's like, well, I mean, if it's that or Florida, I guess I'd rather have you local, but not super happy. It was really funny. It was good. And then
Well,
for like,
you chose the right school, right,
oh
Tyler?
yeah, go Utes.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's awesome. It was hilarious because my grandma, like for probably years after going to the U, when BYU and Utah were still playing and it still kind of meant something, she'd call up or text me during the game just to razz me about like team being down and stuff. I'm like, thanks, Grandma. So good to hear from you too. It was pretty funny. So it was kind of a fun rivalry there.
Yeah.
Um, and then right after PT school, we moved up here to Washington. Um, there was a company that I'd interned for, and they had some spots open. My sister at the time lived kind of up in the Seattle area, and I visited her and kind of liked the area. And so we moved up here 2009. I did some kind of like outpatient orthopedic stuff. And then I had a patient that was retired military. He's like, hey, you need to go work there's big military base up here, Joint Base Lewis McChord. There's a big Army hospital up here, Madigan Army Medical Center. And he's like, you need to go work for the Army. I'm like, that sounds like a terrible idea. But he kept bugging me about it, like persistently. And he was in for a couple different things. It kind of was a long rehab process. And so I was seeing him like twice a week for probably 4 months. And like probably once a week, he's like, "Hey, do you look for jobs?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. I like where I'm at. I'm fine." He kept bugging me and bugging me. And so finally he's like, "Look, there's 2 jobs out available right now. You have to apply for one of them. You have to promise me you're going to apply for one." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, fine. I'll go apply for the job." I'm like, "This is a dumb idea." So I applied for the job, and it turned out it was this really cool new kind of concept of this interdisciplinary model for chronic pain that they were starting in the military. And I'm like, that sounds awesome. I want in, and I've worked there ever since.
Wow.
So I think it was
That's amazing.
2011. Yeah, yeah. It's just like honestly, it was just this incredible blessing. Honestly, that this guy that I still see every once in a while, I always give him a big hug. I'm like, man, I honestly really appreciate it because it's been a great ride where I'm at. In the meantime, we've had 4 kids. My oldest was born in Salt Lake at LDS Hospital.
Mhm.
She's 15, turned 16 this summer. She's driving. A little terrifying, but overall, it's pretty good. And
Crazy.
then, yeah. And then we got a 13-year-old that was born here. We live in Puyallup, it's right outside of Tacoma. She was born in Puyallup. And then my son, Grayson, who's 9, he was born here in Puyallup as well. And then Eleanor was born in a little town a little north of here called Federal Way. And she's 2. And Cammie's 13, and Lauren's 15. And they keep us so busy. Just sports and instruments, and I don't know. You guys probably could tell stories just the same. Um,
It's true.
and then just because I'm like, hey, we're obviously not busy enough. I work full time. My wife works full time, and I'm like, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to get a PhD. That's a great idea. So I'm a year into PhD school. Going to do rehabilitation and movement science, and we'll kind of see where that takes us. But just kind of been
Wow.
a journey, and that's kind of me trying to still figure things out along the way.
Yeah, why not? Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Well, that's that same grandma that would razz me. I remember it was probably halfway through PT school, right? And I mean, it was 4 years for a bachelor's. I'm like 6 years into kind of continuous school, and we were at a family dinner thing, and she's like, "How's school going?" I'm like, "Grandma, it's so long." She's like, Time passes either way. You might as well be working towards something." It's kind of like her nice way of like, "Hey, stop complaining." But like it kind of stuck with me, right? Where it's like, I think about it now, like I've been in this PhD program now for a year, and like I could have not done it, but now I feel like I'm working towards something. So I feel like for my kids too, like my daughter who's 15 is kind of like looking at colleges, and
Yeah.
she's like, "Dad, I just don't know where I want to go." I'm like, "Dude, I'm still figuring it out too. You're fine. It's gonna be good. Just let the journey do its thing and have faith that it'll work out, and it will." I
Mhm.
just keep moving forward, I think is the important thing. But
That's
maybe
cool.
I'll figure it out someday. I don't know. Probably not, but
So is your program somewhere local or is it online stuff?
good question. So I'm actually attending Azusa Pacific University. It's down in LA County.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you're what? You know of it?
Yeah, I used to live in LA, so I know
Oh,
where
okay.
Azusa's at.
Cool. Very cool. So it's like a hybrid program. So it's mostly online stuff. We do class in the evenings, couple nights a week, and then like once a year, we'll go down to campus for like a week. Like a long weekend, really, is what we're down there for. But it's been good. It's been like with all the kids' sports practices and stuff. I've spent more time like schoolwork in the car than anywhere else. So I'm kind of happy to be in my bedroom right now. It's a big change because I was thinking I'd have to do this in the car tonight, but I was talking to one of my professors, and he's kind of same time space of life and stuff, and he's like, "Yeah, man, that's the best place to do work. Like, there's no interruptions." He's like, "I got a little desk I hang on my steering wheel, little light thing for calls and stuff like that." He's like, "I love it." I'm like, "Wow, you're totally into it, man. I gotta go
Oh,
check out
man.
Amazon, see what's going on there."
Yeah. Man, that brings back memories for me in my grad program. I think I did half my grad program sitting waiting for, blood donations as a grad student, like, just
Yeah.
you do work when you can do work, where you can do
Yep.
work, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Man, good for you. That's awesome. Well, Tyler, Take us back now to your beginning of your mission. You can start at the MTC in Preston. I'm sure it was pretty shiny and new at that point in time, and you can tell us more
Yeah.
about that, and then just go through your areas, companions, and memories in Scotland.
Oh man, how long do we got?
As much time as you want.
All right. Um, I just like there's something about like just Scotland just kind of gets in your bones. I don't know. Maybe you guys. I mean, you obviously feel you got the flags behind you doing this podcast. Like
Yeah,
it just like becomes part of you. And well, I'll talk a little bit more about some stuff in a minute. But like I love remembering like the difficult times and the good times, the beautiful things and the hard things, and just all of it that came. So I remember there was probably two times on my mission where I'm like, this is a really bad idea. Like being on a mission, like this is dumb what I'm doing right now. One of those times we were flying from Chicago to Manchester, and it's the middle of the night. We're over the Atlantic, and I've somehow I had a window seat, and I looked down, it's just black, and there was just this like foreboding, like blackness in my soul at that moment where I'm like, this is a terrible idea. What am I doing? Um, the sun comes up, and it's better, but like there was that moment of like what this is not good. Um, but we landed in Manchester. I remember it was like 8 a.m. and we get picked up, and I can't remember because it was like the first counselor at the MTC of the MTC presidency and his wife that picked us up, and just the 15 passenger van, and a bunch of us had met up in Chicago. So the group that went out, I met my companion in Chicago, and then another bunch of us that were going to Manchester, and then on to Chorley. We all pile in the van, and I remember the woman. She kept looking back at us, but she's in the driver's seat, or at least that's what I'm thinking, right? And so like she keeps turning around, and I'm like, dude, you got to look at the road. I'm not saying anything. I'm like, what's going on? Is nobody else concerned about this? I'm like, oh yeah, she's not driving because we're on the opposite side of the road. It's just like one of those like funny things. Like, like okay, a little bit different over here. It's okay that she keeps looking back and trying to talk to us. So we get to Chorley, and I mean, it's just beautiful. I mean, it's a really like mild, what late summer, early fall when I was there. I think maybe the 3 weeks I was there, maybe it rained like once or something like that. So otherwise, it was beautiful and just nice, and a far cry from the Provo MTC in so many ways, which was pretty awesome.
yeah.
My first companion, my MTC companion, was Elder Brandon Black. Super cool guy. Got to kind of serve around him and with him a few times throughout the mission. But super great way to get started. And it was just such a kind of intimate setting there at the Preston MTC, where your class size is relatively small. You pretty much know everybody in the whole MTC. And I remember that I think it was the first night that we were there. Somehow I got stuck on the front row, sitting right next to the MTC president's wife. I couldn't stay awake. I'm like dropping stuff on the floor, like nodding off. And she's very sweet, kind of like helping me pick my pen and paper up off the floor and stuff like that. But that jet lag, that was real.
Oh yeah.
I felt like there was kind of a point during those 3 weeks that we were there, where it was kind of like, okay, we're ready for the next step. And it was probably 2.5 weeks into it, and without having to like learn the language per se. It just was like, okay, we kind of got what we need right now. Let's kind of get to the next step of where we need to be. There was something happened because we were supposed to take the train from Preston up to Edinburgh, but what happened weird with the train, so we ended up flying up there. So we flew into Edinburgh Airport and got picked up by the assistants, and I can't remember. I think it was Elder Allen. Maybe it was one of the assistants when I was there, and I can't remember who the other one was. But we ended up getting in a car with the other one, kind of the silver bullet. We always called it, the assistant's car.
Yep.
And we're talking about like, you know, statistics of plane crashes and car crashes. And the assistant, Hamilton, I think it was Hamilton, he turns around, and he is driving. He turns around, looks at us, and he's like, "Hey, you know, you're more likely to get in a wreck to the airport than actually when you're on the plane," and totally rear end somebody
Oh my gosh.
as we're driving to the MTC. So that's all I heard about that at that point in time. I don't. When did you guys serve? When were you there?
I was there 2004 to 2006, and then Zach was
Okay.
a year after me.
Yeah, 05 to 07.
Okay. So my first mission president was Norman Clyde, and I love President Clyde. He did have a nickname. Some of the missionaries called him Stormin' Norman the Mormon, because he didn't take crap from missionaries, and so I think Elder Hamilton got chewed out pretty bad for getting in a car wreck with the new missionaries on the way from the airport to the mission home on Spylaw Road, which was just. I mean, and I didn't find about that part of it until later. There was another missionary I served, and like, "Yeah, dude, did you hear about that?" I'm like, "I was in the car when that happened." He's like, "Oh man." So that was good times.
That's amazing.
So we get to
you're the first one we've heard that's blown up. We've heard some people have caught a bus, like if something went wrong or something, but
we've heard that there was some instances where like there was strikes from the train workers that shut down the train system, and some people ended up on buses from the MTC, which that would have been awful. But yeah, you're definitely the first to have flown up there. That's crazy cool.
Yeah, it was such a short flight too. And this was like, and it's kind of interesting because like flying pre 9/11 was a little bit different. Just like stuff they would bring on the plane, and they served us a meal. We were in the air for like 45 minutes. We totally had like breakfast on the plane. So it was just, it was just different. But yeah, we totally lucked out as far as that goes. That was a quick trip. Although I did hear that the train ride went through some beautiful country, like in northern England and up through Scotland.
Yeah,
I was honestly a little bit bummed that I didn't get to see that. But anyway, quick flight.
Put it on your bucket list. It's definitely one to do for future.
For sure. Cool. So we get into the mission home. And you do the usual kind of orientation type stuff, and President Clyde gets up there, and the little conference room above the office, kind of above the garage, and he's got the chalkboard, and he draws a big box, and then he draws a little box, and then he draws a weird looking shape, and he's like, "Hey, this is the big box. If you do what you're supposed to, you get to stay in the big box. If you don't do what you're supposed to, then you go in the little box. That means I keep a tight leash on you. And if you still don't do what you're supposed to, this is an airplane, and I send you home." And we'd been in Scotland an hour, maybe, and it's like, okay, President Clyde's for real. Wow. So I mean, it was kind of, we're kind of like looking around each other, like, is he serious? I'm like, he looks pretty serious. As far as I know, I don't know that maybe he did, but I wasn't aware of anybody he actually sent home. He did his best to keep everybody out as long as they were willing to be there.
That's good.
And then we went, we went out and did the missionary thing. We went out, and I think it was. When I was on my mission, there was two elder Mulligans. There was an older brother Mulligan and a younger brother Mulligan. And elder brother Mulligan, he was out for maybe like a month or two, overlapping with my mission. But then his younger brother was only like a couple months older than me in the mission, so we got to know each other a bit throughout the mission. But anyway, Elder Mulligan took us out, kind of northern Edinburgh, Leith area. Knocked on a few doors, stopped some people. No idea what they were saying. I'm interested. Where were, like, for you guys, like your first couple of days in the mission, was it hard? Where were you guys at the first couple of days, or your first area?
I lucked out and went south to Dumfries, so there was a lot of people from England there. I could actually understand maybe half the word, but the other half that they were married to, I couldn't understand.
Yeah.
I was the complete opposite of Jack. Jack trained me in Peterhead, so north of Aberdeen, and my goodness, that Buchan accent is like a foreign language altogether. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So Jack
Yeah.
had to make sure that he was listening with the keen ear, because often I would just turn around and be like, "Help me out here. I don't know what these people said."
Pretty sure they're talking to me, but I don't know that registered.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
So we you do the missionary thing. We went up to Arthur's Seat, Pratt's Hill, and we did our, kind of setting apart our mission thing, which was super cool. And just like beautiful. I mean, like, of places to go on the earth, right? Where it's like we're here on top of this mountain, which has got like some really cool big historical context, but then also cool historical context for our church. And then you're just got this incredible view of this beautiful city. And I'm like, oh man, Scotland's pretty cool.
Yeah, agreed.
And then the next day, I got sent to Glasgow.
Nice.
And I was in Maryhill. Elder Thomas Hood was my trainer, and
Glasgow.
Yeah, Glasgow. Yeah, Glasgow. Super patient guy. I was probably more than a handful, and I'm pretty stubborn anyway. And he was very patient with me, which I have been very appreciative of ever since. But Glasgow. So we get to we take the train station, and then we get off the train. We hop on a subway, and then we get off the subway, and like I've got my luggage, right? But this is like we didn't have any money growing up, so I've got like tattered luggage and just whatever Grandpa had and Dad had and Mom had, bags I'm carrying and over the shoulder and stuff. We're trying to go through the turnstiles at the subway and get the stuff up onto the bus, and just like sweating. And then we picked up like 2 boxes of Books of Mormon too, like that we're taking from the mission home. So like we're carrying all this luggage and then boxes, and it's a lot of walking in addition to just like transferring from train to subway to bus to walk. And then we get up to our apartment, and that door had been kicked in so many times that all of the wood jamb was all broken away and gone. And there's like metal rods there to kind of keep the door shut.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, oh man, can I go back to Edinburgh? That place seemed nice.
Where am I? Oh,
yeah,
God.
no kidding. And so we go into the apartment. There's like a bathroom, like just off to the left. Half of the floor it's down to like just wood. And then also you can see the joists underneath in places. And
oh my gosh.
Wow, this is terrible. This is inner city Glasgow, I guess. And I know that like there's rougher places in Glasgow than we were at, but it felt pretty rough. And so, it's kind of like, all right, well, this is just what we're going to do. That was the second time on my mission that I'm like, I think this is a bad idea. But kind of get like unpacked and, ready to go. And Elder Hood's like, all right, man, we're going to get you out, get going. And he was really good about that. It's like, hey, we're going to work hard. We're not going to give you time to get homesick. And that was blessed to not have that be a problem for me. So we got to work, and I felt we worked really hard with Elder Hood. But we were out, let's see, I think that was like midweek. So it was probably like Wednesday or something like that. Friday night. So we were sharing an apartment with 4, and Elder McPhee and Elder Payne were the other companionship. And it's 9:30 and they're not there. And I kind of look at Elder Hood. I'm like, hey, is this normal? He's like, no, they're usually really good about being where they're supposed to be. 10 o'clock rolls around, 10:30 rolls around, 11 o'clock rolls around. And a little after 11, if I remember right, we get a call from President Clyde saying that Elder Payne and Elder McPhee were in the hospital because they got jumped at a bus stop on the way back. And probably like 20 minutes later, they showed up. And I think like Elder McPhee had got punched in the face, and then Elder Payne had got like headbutted in the face. So they had like, just like the super glue stuff to like bandage them up and stuff. I'm like, Glasgow, great, serve a mission.
Gosh, crazy.
that was definitely an experience, man. And we I feel like Elder Hood and I, like, we worked hard, but we had nothing. Like we maybe like 2 people that we taught like a second or third discussion to. Like there's nobody that we had that progressed. So it was rough in that way. But also looking back, like there's like all like Maryhill, Govan stuff aside, there's some cool places in Glasgow. Like downtown Glasgow is like really cool and historic. And just like you get out of like the subway and there's almost always a bagpiper playing and it just echoes through the city walls. And it's honestly still just like that sound just gives me chills. Like it's just like, so there's some good times there. There's some rough times, but there was some good times. And then I got introduced to, football, to soccer. So every Saturday morning we go do our soccer thing, some local park. We have to go through these neighborhoods, man. There's like drug needles and pill bottles and other paraphernalia on the ground, stuff like that. I'm like, okay, it's just how it goes. And so we go to play soccer and just I've kind of loved soccer ever since because of those Saturday mornings, which is super cool.
Yeah.
Going to Glasgow, first off, I was terrified I was going to be stuck in the Glasgow Triangle. I'd never get out. But I had 3 months and I got shot out and never went back. So I went up to Aberdeen.
Nice.
And I was back then they had assistant zone leaders. And it was Elder Austin McGilvery that was the zone leader there, and I was his companion. I was a significant pain in his neck also. I think by the time he got done, because he was on his last 3 months, and I served with him for those last 3 months. I would say that by the time we kind of got done with our companionship, we were in a good place, but we had a rough kind of start there, and it was probably mostly me. But we did get to see a lot of cool stuff because the zone leaders area covered up. We went and visited the elders up in Peterhead. We went out Balmoral Castle, and then there was a super cool lady in Stonehaven that we would visit every at the end of every P day. We'd go down and we'd go hang out at Donator Castle for like the last hour of our P day, and then we'd go visit Sister Violet Lowe down in Stonehaven, and she'd make us eat so much. She'd weigh us, in fact, before she's like, you got to get on the scale, and then she'd feed us like so much food. And 7 pounds, I think, was the record. 7 pounds I gained in a meal.
Oh my word! That's crazy.
I know, it was insane. I look back now on that experience, and that poor beautiful woman. She was probably in her late 60s, early 70s. She was, if I remember right, kind of like beginning stages of Parkinson's. And there's a couple of other health limitations she had, but she fed us every single week, and then she'd usually make us goodies to spare and take home and share with the other missionaries, she said. And just an incredible, thoughtful, wonderful woman.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. And then Elder McGilvery went home, and then Nathan Werner was my next companion. He had been in a championship bagpipe band and had actually traveled to Scotland before his mission.
Wow.
And he got special permission to bring his bagpipes on his mission. So at zone conferences and stuff like that, he was given permission to play his bagpipes, which was super cool. Nice. Super nice guy, really great guy. Really enjoyed serving with him. We had some good times. There was that road, I can't remember what the road is. It goes from Aberdeen kind of straight west, but it goes through like over the Bridge D, if I remember right. And like there was the Balmoral Castle, and then there was another one that was even further out than that. I can't remember, the Braemar Castle. And back in those old days, people would call up the telephone number and deliver us our VHS tape that we need to go and deliver. Oh my God. So we did that road, I'd say multiple times, and just incredibly beautiful. Being in that part of Scotland was super awesome.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. That would be cool.
Yeah. And the nice thing too, which is maybe not great, because the Glasgow was all public transport and walking, so you walk tons, and then car area in Aberdeen, which I was like, oh wow, I'm gonna do this. This is great. Don't have to be in the rain as much. And then we went down. See, I transferred down to Edinburgh after that. I was in back then. There was the branch and a ward, and I was in the branch for 6 months. I was junior companion to Elder Justin Pratt, and he was the district leader. And we had an interesting district because we had the office brother and sister, elder and sister Berquist, that were in our district, and then we also had another sister companionship that at one point in time was a young sister and then an elderly sister. And then some of the other missionaries would make fun of us because we had the highest collective age of a district in the whole mission, just because at least half, and most of the time 2/3 of our mission were senior missionaries, which honestly was like a cool inspiration of just you're 60, 70 years old, and the women that were in our district, widows. And they're like, yeah, I'm going to go out and serve a mission. And they're flipping out there proselyting. They're talking to people on the streets. And it makes my hands feel clammy just thinking about stuff like that now.
Yeah, that's right.
But they're out doing it. And they were working every bit as hard as anybody else out there, which is super cool. And then flipping Edinburgh, that city is just awesome. So I got to serve in Edinburgh. And there was definitely some rough areas in Edinburgh. So I was out with Elder Pratt, and then he got transferred out, and then I became a district leader and a trainer, senior companion, all at once. And it was Elder Seth Erkenbrack was my first guy that I trained. And there was a street that we would go down, and there was one member that lived there, but we ended up knocking on doors and finding another family, and I think we baptized 3 or 4 of that family. Let me think really quick. Yeah, there was 4 of them, I think, that we baptized. And the kids in that neighborhood were terrible. My companion, the Elder Erkenbrack, he's like, dude, it's Hell Street. Every time we go there, everybody wants to fight us. And he wasn't wrong. We were always getting stuff thrown at us. These probably 15, 16-year-old kids were always trying to fight us and throwing stuff at us. And he's like, I hate going down that street. I'm like, dude, it's the only place where people want to listen to us. He's like, I know, but I hate it. So it was a challenge. So Hell Street, and I can't remember the actual name of the street, but Geraldine Moore was the member on that road, and her daughter, I want to say Melinda maybe, lived with her at the time, but she was maybe 17. And then the Kirkpatrick family that we tracked it into, Carol, and then Andrew, and then Mandy, and it was just the 3 of them, I guess, that we baptized. And then there was a couple other older sisters that usually just make fun of us while we're doing our stuff, but nice. We were on that street a lot. We also got to do, and you guys probably had the experience of going to the military tattoo. Did you do that in Edinburgh?
Yes. That was awesome.
So cool. So the first year I was there was the 50th anniversary, I think. And so nice. They had bands from all over the Commonwealth, everywhere from Fiji to Jamaica, to South Africa. They'd all gathered for kind of this big 50th anniversary. And there was a boatload of people there because of, the Fringe Festival and then the tattoo and everything. But that was super cool. That was fun too. In ways it was fun. Sometimes it was a hassle because we were in northern Edinburgh. We had to, go down to the mission home for different things. The church building that we used, the branch and the ward used the same building right next to the mission home. And so we'd have to go from north to kind of the middle part of Edinburgh. During the festival, the bus traffic on Princess Street was so bad. We'd usually get off of the bus, walk down Princess Street, which is cool because we see all kind of street performers, everything that was going on, and then get 3 buses ahead on that same route and just jump on there just because the traffic was so bad. But it was kind of cool to walk through there.
Yeah,
but we did have to give us another 45 minutes to get where we're going because everybody was there, which is fun unless you're really trying to get someplace.
That's right.
And then I was in Edinburgh for 6 months. So I was Elder Pratt for like 6 weeks, Elder Birkenbrack for 3 months. And then Elder Jeremy Blake, I trained like 2 right in a row. Elder Jeremy Blake was another guy that I trained there, and for 6 weeks we were there together, and he got to experience Hell Week as well, or Hell Street, sorry. Not far from there, we were knocking on doors. And we knocked on the door, and this guy, I'd say probably mid-20s, answers the door, and we, gave her door spiel, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm interested." We're like, "Really? Oh, that's cool. All right." He's like, "But I can't do it now, but you guys can come back." And we're like, "Oh, okay, sure."
Great.
So, we write it down. We're like, "Okay, we'll be back tonight at 6 or whatever," right? So we come back at 6, and same dude opens the door. He's like, "Oh, I forgot you guys were coming." And he's like, "Give me a second." Closes the door. And then like a minute later comes back. He's like, "Hey, I got a bunch of friends over. Is that cool?" And we're like, "Yeah, that's cool. You can talk to all your friends." So we go in there, and there are probably like 12, 20 something dudes in there. And they are straight up rolling joints.
Oh no.
While we're talking. They're like, "Hey, you don't mind, do you?" I'm like, "Go ahead. I'd like to teach you about Joseph Smith, if you don't mind, in the Book of Mormon." There was probably, of the group, there was definitely the kind of the hecklers, and they were nice heckling. They weren't jerk heckling. They were just kind of, poking fun, like, "Hey, I'm just here to get high, man. I didn't want any religious stuff." But there's a couple people that were kind of a little bit more asking questions and stuff, and I think we left a couple Book of Mormons, but we didn't go back to the weed house after that.
It's funny.
Let me think. So that was Edinburgh that was about a little less than half of, I was up to about half of my mission. So then my next area, let me think. No, I guess it was just a little over half. So it's probably about like 13 months. And then I get transferred up to Inverness to be a zone leader up there.
Nice.
And holy cow. I mean, Inverness was awesome. And our area was huge. So like for Inverness, like it was, I think like our area was like 300 miles wide. And I think it was like 100 miles tall. Did either of you serve up there at all?
Not specifically, but drove around the area as a zone leader. Because again, I'm curious to know, Tyler, how many missionaries were in the mission when you got to Scotland? I'm curious.
So we maintained about 200 to 220.
Okay. So by the time I got to the mission, there was about 100 less missionaries in our mission. And so as Inverness was no longer a zone with the zone leader area in it, and so Aberdeen was the zone leader area that covered the whole north of Scotland.
Oh my gosh.
It was drastically different as far as number of missionaries covering all areas of the country.
Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real quick side note. So one of my good friends, his mom served in the Scotland, Ireland mission.
Nice.
And I didn't know that they combined, right? So I kind of knew that they were pulling numbers down after I left.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think when she served. I don't know, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Yeah, the missions merged in July of 2010. So
okay.
It's been the S.E.M, or the Scotland Ireland mission, now for almost 14 years.
14 years, yeah.
Yeah,
wow.
Crazy.
So back in the olden times when there was a Scotland Edinburgh mission and there was still an Inverness zone, I'm trying to think, like we didn't go as far down south as Oban, but we went to the end of Glencoe. That was, I think, kind of the southern end of our, not only our zone, but the Inverness missionaries area. And then the zone went all the way up to Orkney Islands, and then we had Shetland also. And then when I first got up there, there were missionaries on the Hebrides too.
Oh wow!
And then our area went from Nairn, I think Nairn, just a little east of Inverness, and then we went all the way to the Isle of Skye. And then we went just barely north of Inverness because there was missionaries in Allness.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And then there was, oh man, I can't remember the name of the town. It was just a little bit east of Nairn. We had another couple missionaries there. But definitely had some Inverness. It was super cool. So there was a member that lived out on the Isle of Skye. And prior to me getting there, she just had surgery on her wrist. And you guys remember everything's, standard transmission over there, right? So she's like, I can't shift with my hand, and so I can't drive. And so I would love it if you guys would come out and visit. So while I was there for 6 months, every month we would go out to the Isle of Skye and kind of visit her and hang out, which was super cool.
Awesome.
But my first companion in Inverness was Elder Dustin Clough. He was relatively new. I think he was out maybe like 3 or 4 months. He was a good hard worker and had a good heart and really wanted to help people out. And just, there was there's a lot of work that we did those first few months. There was because the zone leader thing, we do the splits with the other districts and stuff like that. We were doing splits with another district, and we ran into a girl that we'd been through that neighborhood like multiple times, but they had found her. Rebecca Williams, I think, was her name. She ended up moving to the States, and I think went to Rick's, but then BYU Idaho. But kind of just a cool experience. And there was the bishop's family really kind of took her under their wing and did so much to help her out. It was just kind of a cool thing to see. But Elder Clough and I would go out to the Isle of Skye, and there's this little tiny bridge. It's probably, I don't know, it's probably like 200 yards long, maybe not even that long. And it's like you have to pay, I think at the time, I think it was like 10 pounds, like both ways. Like it was a steep toll. And I remember every time we go back and forth, he'd always get mad about it. It was kind of funny. He's like, "Oh man, we gotta pay both ways." But that drive going from Inverness, and then you drive along Loch Ness, and then you kind of just cut straight west. You go out to the Isle of Skye. Is just some incredible, beautiful country. You get out to the coast there, and it's just awesome.
That's so cool.
The little tiny town on the Isle of Skye was Portree that we would go. The member, she lived a little bit out, had kind of like a little herd of sheep and stuff like that. So we'd go out there, we'd get to feed the sheep, I think a couple times. She let us do that. And then we'd go to Portree and hang out, get some, chips at the chippy or something like that, and then drive back. But that was, I think it was a few hour drive out there. So it was usually like a day. And we try to maximize our time, with the referrals and stuff, those little teeny tiny towns. We try to stop along the way and make sure we were doing the best we could to maximize our time. Elder Clough left, and then I got Elder Jesse Jones. Also super cool guy. I really enjoyed serving with him. He had been a triathlete before the mission. He did the Spud Band in Idaho. He'd tell me stories about that in his training. That was cool.
That's cool.
And then that's when we switched. So after Elder Jones left, I got Elder Jeff Hoffman, and Elder Jeff Hoffman and I were the first time where they did co-zone leaders. Before that, it was always like zone leader and then zone leader assistant is what they called it, or zone leader companion, I think is what they called it. So from that point on, it was always, the 2 zone leaders over the zone. And we had some crazy experiences. We had a good time. Real quick, going back with Elder Jones. So there was, I think it was a Lamb of God video that we were delivering, and we, called up the guy on the phone. We're like, "Hey, we've got your video. We'd like to come and drop it off." And he sounded totally out of it. And he's like, "Yeah, just knock on the door, but if it's open, just come in and make sure I'm still alive." I'm like, "Okay, guess we're getting into an adventure here." So whatever day of the week it was, we go out and we drive in. It's on. So there's the main road that goes. God, let me think. I think the the west side of Loch Ness is kind of the main road, but on the other side there's a smaller road and like a couple little like farms on that side of Loch Ness.
Mm-hmm.
And we go up to this guy's, we find, it's kind of like farm, and we go up to the door, and the door is slightly ajar. And you guys are aware that guns are more or less outlawed in Scotland. There are literally bullets all over the ground, and like ammo cans. And I remember Elder Jones, I looked at him, he's like, "We're going to die." I'm like, "I think we're going to be okay." And so like we knock on the door, and there's a voice coming from within, and we're like, "Hey, missionaries from the church, can we come in?" Yeah, come in. So we come in, and dude has got like disheveled hair. He's like, if I remember right, he had pants on. I don't think he had a shirt on, but he had like a blanket on, and just like very much out of it. And very interesting experience. We didn't get more than just like, "Hey, here's your video. Would you like to talk about it?" And he was out of it enough that we weren't making much progress. We're like, "We're gonna go now and leave your bullets there, just on our way out."
Oh my word, goodness.
There was another guy on the high street in Inverness, and we do that street 6 days a week, walking up and down that street. We always stop and talk to him for a little bit. And he knew who we were. And he's like, "Yeah, I think I'd like to join your church. I'd be interested in having another wife or two." I'm like, we don't do that anymore. Sorry. You missed that one by like 100 years.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Cool guy. He actually swam across Loch Ness.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I just can't even imagine. He told us some cool stories about kind of like training up for it, but he showed us like the news article and stuff. He's pretty proud of it, but he had a little like jewelry shop on High Street there in Inverness. Maybe one more story for kind of Inverness. Well, two more stories, and then I'll go to the next area. So back then, because we had missionaries all the way up on Orkney, what would happen is that the new missionaries, transfer day, they would come from wherever, go through Inverness, and a lot of times they'd spend either the night with us in Inverness, or they'd go up to Thurso and spend the night in Thurso, or sometimes, depending on what the travel was like, they do like a night with us and then a night in Thurso, and then the next day go up to Orkney. So it was sometimes a multiple day journey to get up there. And we had a missionary, a group of 4 missionaries. They were driving up from Inverness to Thurso. 2 missionaries were in Thurso, and the other 2 missionaries going up to Orkney. And Madonna was getting married in northern Scotland, and so this was a bunch of years ago.
Oh my gosh.
And they're like, "Dude, we want to go check this out." And so while they're doing this, they are going around a roundabout. The dude driving is not paying attention. He's trying to look at the map to see where the castle is that Madonna's going to be at. Goes right over the top of the roundabout, like wrecks the signs that are in the middle of the roundabout, wrecks it. Not too much damage on the car, but some, and everybody was okay. But he called me up. He's like, "Elder Snow?" I'm like, "Yeah, what's up, man?" He's like, "We wrecked the car." I'm like, "What happened? Is everybody okay?" "Everybody's okay." I'm like, "What are you guys doing?" "We're going to Madonna's wedding." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "I just figured, it's kind of on the way." But so a different time, missionaries were going from Inverness up to Thurso to Orkney. There was 2 missionaries going up to Orkney, spent the night, and 4 elders went to bed, but only 3 elders were there in the morning. And again, the district leader up there calls me up. He's like, "Elder Snow, we're missing a missionary." I'm like, "What do you mean you're missing a missionary?" He's like, "We got up." I'm like, "Dude, it was like a 8:45. I'm like, "It's a 8:45. Did you just notice?" He's like, "We may have slept in." I'm like, "Great, confessions keep coming. It's fantastic." I'm like, "All right, dude, go check train stations. Do what you can. I'm going to call up." And it was President Wilkinson. So halfway through my mission, I switched from President Clyde to President Wilkinson. So I called up President Wilkinson. I'm like, hey, Elder so-and-so's gone. He's like, what do you mean gone? I'm like, went to bed with the missionaries, woke up, and he's not there. And he's like, Jiminy Christmas. And so that dude straight up hitchhiked from Thurso down to Edinburgh.
What?
Yeah, I don't know how the heck, but he got himself from Thurso to Edinburgh to the mission home and had a good heart-to-heart with President Wilkinson, stayed on the mission, and was an awesome missionary. But just had like this panic moment of, I don't belong here. But Thurso to Edinburgh, right? That's like a
insane.
6-hour drive.
Yeah.
That was pretty crazy. There was, oh man, I wish I could remember that town that the missionaries were in. There was just,
is it Elgin?
Oh yes, yeah, Elgin. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So the two missionaries were in Elgin. One of the winters I was there was like the highest snowfall they'd had in forever. I actually spent a night all by myself. I sent a companion out, and then the train stopped, and so I didn't get my companion there. So I was just all by my lonesome in Inverness. It was kind of weird because at that point in time, you're institutionalized. I've been out for over a year, and it's like, how am I supposed to do anything? I don't have a companion.
That's right.
So tons of snowfall, and then one of my good mission friends, he and his companion were in Elgin and driving down country road, going around a corner, and the car just skates right into one of those stone dikes and munches up the car. And this was not that long after, maybe a few months, if I remember right. It could have been longer, but not that long after the other missionaries had wrecked the car going to see Madonna. And so the missionary, called up President Wilkinson, and he's like, hey, President Wilkinson, wrecked the car. When do you think we're going to get a replacement? And President Wilkinson's like, hey, do you guys have horses up there? He's like, I guess there's horses up here. Why? He's like, you could think about riding those. He's like, we can't get horses. He's like, I don't know, maybe a Shetland pony, big dogs, because you're not getting another car.
Oh my gosh.
And so they're stuck in Elgin, and I mean, roughly at least the area, right? Like they covered a big area as well.
Yeah.
But they were kind of stuck in Elgin, just trying to do their thing because I don't think they got a car for months and months afterwards. Wow. There were multiple wrecks around the mission, but I think President Wilkinson kind of got fed up with it. It's like, hey, you can't drive in the snow. Maybe you shouldn't have a car.
Yeah, that's a fair punishment, I think.
Yeah.
My gosh.
So 6 months in Inverness, super cool experience. And then for the last 6 months of my mission, I was an assistant. So I got to go back down to Edinburgh.
Nice.
And I'm trying to, it was the younger Elder Mulligan, if I remember. He was the assistant going out, I think. Oh, there was kind of a weird thing because there was 3 assistants for a little bit, I think. If I remember right, it was Elder Wilshire, Elder Mulligan, and Elder Williams, Paul Williams. And Paul Williams and I were companions for the first 3 months of being an assistant. And then it was Elder Staley for the last 3 months of being an assistant. That was a super cool experience. And our roles kind of changed a little bit, where prior to kind of Elder Williams and I, the assistants had kind of just been with President Wilkinson, kind of following him around. But he's like, hey, I need you guys to proselyte too. I need you to be in your area. I need you to kind of set an example and work hard. So we did our best to try to do both. It was challenging for sure, because we do, like a zone conference over in Glasgow and then zip back to Edinburgh and then try to go proselyte in our area. And there was multiple times either Paul or I, probably mostly me, would fall asleep while driving. And I've been able to kind of keep in Paul a little bit. But I remember we went to my wife and I went to his wedding, and earliest wedding reception. And he was telling the story. He's like, yeah. And he's from England. And he's telling the story. He's like, yeah, Elder Snow and I were driving from Glasgow to Edinburgh, and I look over and he's totally sleeping while he's driving. And he's like, I was so tired, I didn't even care. So we just kept going. And it was just how tired we were, because we're doing our best to just try to work hard, but man, we were just falling asleep all over the place, including while driving the car.
Wow.
But fortunately, never any wrecks. So guardian angels, I guess, watching out for us. Um, but working with Paul Williams was a super cool experience. Probably one of my favorite mission companions, I would say, that I've definitely kept in touch with, and I've had some really good companions too. But I think there was something different about kind of what we were trying to do and trying to help out with. That they just kind of set us out a little bit. And that was also a cool experience, because you got to see all the missionaries coming in and then all the missionaries going out. And being able to hang out with President Wilkinson and Sister Wilkinson was a really cool experience, like trying to go through the whole transfer process. And that was usually a week or more adventure. And it was good times. And then there was awesome office elders at the same time. It was Elder Loganberg, Elder Punhausen, Elder Celine, I think, were some of the guys that were there. We had a good time with them. And then Elder Staley was my last companion. And we kept working, just as hard. And right at the end, I think with Elder Williams, there was actually a cool Chilean family, and you guys probably ran into a bunch of oil workers or people who worked for oil companies there. And this is a family from Chile who had he was a executive, and was it Phillips 66, I think, and so they're pretty well off and living in a pretty nice part of Edinburgh. And the family, there was 3 kids, and the 2 older kids were baptized, but the youngest girl, she was 9, so technically, missionary purview, and so we got to teach her, which was a kind of a really cool experience with that family in general, and just super nice and super kind. And then cool to kind of see like all that hard work pay off, to be able to see somebody get baptized as well. And it just so happened that they had a cousin in the ward too, which was kind of crazy coincidence, and so he was able to do the baptism, and it was a fun experience.
Wow. That's cool.
And then finished off with Elder Staley. Got to do the military tattoo again, but we got to do a little bit more from the coordinating side, with the office elders and the assistants, trying to get everybody where they're going. That was amazing. Nobody got lost. It's amazing. Everybody made it back to where they were supposed to be. Also, Elder Monson at the time visited the mission with Elder Worthland during that last 6 months. And it was funny because there was a big meeting for all the saints in Scotland, and we were in, I think we were in Dundee, I think is where we did the meeting. And so we got all the missionaries from all over the whole mission to Dundee. And I don't know how you guys did stuff, but we had sometimes like 20, 30 missionaries in an apartment. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
Who the hell thought that was a good idea? And just for like overnight, right? Like it's one night, it's like, hey, we need you to stay here, and we just pack them in to different apartments. Actually, that brings back some memories. But so we stayed in an apartment, and by the time my companion and I got to the apartment, like we kind of made sure everybody was put to bed, kind of thing, made sure everybody's where they're supposed to be. By the time we got to this apartment, I think there was at least 20 people there, and every sleepable surface had been claimed. Every blanket had been claimed, every pillow, everything that looked like a pillow. So I remember spending the night like under my jacket, my like rain jacket, on like one like couch cushion or something like that. Like the terrible night of sleep. And then President Monson was there the next day. He met with the missionaries at first, and at the time it was kind of a tradition where missionaries for like big like multi zone meetings could wear kilts. That was kind of permissible. And we get done with that meeting, and there was probably, I don't know, at least a dozen missionaries that had kilts on. And President Monson pops up like right after the meeting, and he goes over to Elder Worthland. And he's like, "Hey, Joe, what do you think about these kids wearing kilts? Do you think it's a good idea?" They did not think it was a good idea. They felt like we should be in our, just regular attire. So that from that point on, if it was your last zone conference, you could wear it then. But other than that, no more kilts at zone conferences. But it was just hilarious. I was just close enough to the stand to hear him walk over. "Hey, Joe, what do you think about these kids wearing their kilts?" It was pretty funny. So as far as, and I don't know what happened afterwards, but at least for the rest of my mission, that it was just your last zone conference, you can wear your kilt. But that reminds me of it really quick, going back to Aberdeen days. It was when I was in Inverness, because we were traveling to Aberdeen for a zone conference down there. And again, 20 to 30 missionaries in an apartment, and we're going over to, I think it was like the Bridge of Dawn missionaries apartment, and packing in there. But we're going from the Aberdeen church to that apartment. And we had those little Vauxhalls, or were they Vauxhalls, or what were they?
Vauxhall Corsa.
Yes, yeah. Teeny tiny, smaller than a Geo Metro, right? We fit 7 people. I don't know how we had 7, but 7 people into that car. And we're like a block away from the apartment. A flipping cop is right behind us.
Oh no!
Lights go on, and we go across the intersection. If I remember right, Paul Williams was driving, and my companion Dustin Clough is in the back, like up on top of luggage in the back, like crammed up there. And the police officer, he was pretty cool. He's like, open up. And so we open up, and literally my companion spills out of the back with the luggage. And he's like, "You have too many passengers in the car. You have to not have this many passengers in the car." I was like, "All right, sir, we're sorry." And so I think, with 4 passenger, comfortably maybe 5. So I think 3 people walked the block that was still left to go to get down there. Can't believe some of this stuff.
Oh gosh.
And then finish up with Elder Staley, and then my family, parents and grandparents, and youngest brother came over, and we toured around Mission for 10 days. And since I kind of had like 4 corners, I got to kind of see a little bit of everything. We kind of did a little bit of everything, and then got home beginning of October 2001.
Man, what a journey. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, one question we ask all our guests is if you have any specific memories or like great experiences that you had with your mission president. So with President Clyde, at the beginning of your mission, and obviously you spent some time with the Wilkinsons as well.
So I'm trying to think. I think it was about 9 months out when President and Sister Clyde went home. So I don't feel like I got to know them as well. Super kind, super nice. Had high expectations, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Sister Clyde, when you went to your interviews for before zone conference, very much about grooming. She'd look at your shoes. She'd look at your crease in your pants. She'd look at the crease in your shirt and cut of your hair and how much product you had in, and but also an incredibly kind person. After a mission, I had an opportunity to go and visit them a couple of times. They had a home up kind of the Sundance area. Yeah. And just incredibly welcoming and just super kind. And to them, the missionaries were part of their family. Like when I was there, "Oh, Sister so-and-so was just here last week, and Elder so-and-so, you remember them? They were here." And just even after the mission, continued to have just this open hearts, open doors, let anybody kind of come and visit, which was, I think, just a really cool thing that despite the fact that we get spread to the 4 corners of the earth, that there's something that kind of really connects us.
Yeah.
With each other going through this mission experience, and especially if we've gone to the same place. Mm-hmm. And I think they continue to take that very, very seriously. And missionaries wanted to, they were, as far as they know, were on a regular basis entertaining people at their house, missionaries. Actually, there was a friend, Elder McPhee, the guy that got punched in the face my first week there. I went to his wedding out in Duchesne, and actually rode out with another friend for the mission, and then the Clydes to go to his wedding. And so just continued to do that, which is just a cool example. With President and Sister Wilkinson, I definitely got to know them a lot more. Just basically lived next door for 6 months with them, and I was always just kind of amazed at like how hard of workers both of them were, and just how passionate they were about trying to help the missionaries succeed, and not just number stuff, but just like have a conversion experience of their own. I think were things that weighed on both of them, maybe a little bit different both ways, but definitely there in both ways. Sister Wilkinson she was tons of fun to work with. We got to spend a decent amount of time like doing kind of like kitchen stuff, like missionaries going in and going out. And it was fun to kind of like just be with her. And it was Sister Black who was worked in the kitchen at the time. And she was hilarious. We always had a good laugh with her. And then Sister Wilkinson too. We had a good time. And just like a family thing, right? Where it's like nothing felt more natural than sitting down and we had a Sunday evenings with the Wilkinsons every Sunday that I was there. Pretty much, we had Sunday dinner with them, and the other office elders, and some cool experiences there too. Elder Rolf Kerr, I think maybe has since passed away, but he was there. He's 70 at the time when I was there, and we had dinner with him while he was there, and that was a really cool experience. Just some of the fun stories that he would tell, and then also just the fact that there was a couple of things that we did that we would pray about and we really felt good about, and we moved forward, and it was clearly the wrong thing that we did. And I think like President Wilkinson's example was just like, all right, well, we didn't get it right. Let's just keep moving. And I think sometimes I have a tendency to perseverate on mistakes, but that was a really good example of like, all right, well, that was a try, and we're just going to keep going at it again. I kind of like, I guess, Nephi. It's like, well, I guess this whole talking to Laban thing didn't work the first time, so let's try something else, and we're just going to keep doing it. But we're going to do it until it's done, and we're going to keep working at it. And I think President Wilkinson was a good example of that. And then also just like just this, again, just kind of this welcoming open door. Like I remember having just genuinely wonderful personal conversations with President Wilkinson through the time that I was there, of just being able to sit him and I in his office and just chat about concerns that I had, or goals that I had, or thoughts that I had, or things that I was working on, and just always had the time for it, which is a really cool example.
That's awesome. I love it. Those are great memories and great experiences that you had. One question that came to my mind when you mentioned Sister Black, was she still making the birthday cookies at that point in time?
I don't remember birthday cookies.
Okay.
No, I don't remember birthday cookies.
Maybe it was at the end of your time, because I'm pretty sure it was a Wilkinson tradition that was started, and we thought for the longest time that the mission president's wife was baking them, but we found out that it was Sister Black.
Sister Black that was doing it.
So,
oh man, she was a riot.
Yeah.
No, I don't remember. So I was like, the Wilkinsons still had 2 years after I left. So I mean, it's a bit of a time.
Right. Yeah, it could have been a collaboration between Sister Wilkinson and Sister Black, but
yeah,
it was just funny because we learned through the podcast that it was Sister Black that was making them, not the mission president's wife. So
that's funny.
We had to give her some credit for her efforts, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Tyler, this has been a ton of fun. I also have to give you a shout out as well, because to this point in our podcast, you are the elder statesman. As far as the person that was on our list, that was in the mission, within our parameters of time that we've talked to. So thank you for coming on and sharing your experiences. One thing that we ask at the end of the podcast is there anyone in specific, whether companions or otherwise, that you'd like to shout out as you share this podcast with them, to have them come on the podcast and share their experience of the S.E.M?
Oh man. First off, thank you so much for this trip down memory lane. I am very grateful. It's been super cool for you guys to like listen to my stories.
Yeah.
For I don't even know how long we've been talking for, but a while. And so thank you very much for that. All of my companions, I think it would be super awesome. Chad Staley, I think would be awesome to hear from. Paul Williams would be great to hear from. Jeff Hoffman, I think, would be a riot to hear from. That dude, photographic memory, and had like every episode of The Simpsons memorized.
Really?
And so I never watched The Simpsons. My mom was like, "It's a terrible show, whatever," which is ironic in a bunch of ways. But he had every episode memorized, and everything reminded him of a Simpsons episode. So Jeff Hoffman, Dustin Clough, super cool guy. I mean, everybody that we've mentioned, Jesse Jones, Nathan Werner, Austin McGilvery, Justin Pratt, Thomas Hood. I think I got everybody in there. I would be interested to hear from all of them. Some really good friends that I made on the mission. Aaron Jones, he's from Wales. But like super good friends. Sterling Richards was another great friend. Aaron Jones, he was the dude that wrecked the car into the stone dike.
I love it. I love that you just name names and call them out.
Yeah,
on
I did.
that. Well done.
I totally
well
did. I totally did. Yeah. Yeah. I won't go into the Madonna thing, but Aaron Jones will. Yeah, I'd super love to hear him. That'd be cool. But yeah, so just I think those would be some cool people to hear from. Cool perspectives, and they also got to be in a bunch of different places, kind of all over the place in the mission too.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing we'll ask of you, Tyler, is those that you're still in contact with, when we publish this, I ask you to share it with them, because obviously they'll listen and then they'll be able to hear your shout out. And then ultimately we hope that they'll respond. But if anyone who's listening wants to reach out to us, you can get us on our email. It's sempodcast@51spylaw.com. Or you can go to our website, 51spylaw.com, and fill out a contact sheet. Or you might find a message in your Facebook account, or maybe an email address from our email address as well. So just keep an eye out for that. But Tyler, this has been a lot of fun. And honestly, like you said, your story is something that we revel in as we listen to these. Every single conversation is so unique and different. Everyone's experience is so much fun to listen to, because we know that beautiful land, there's magic there that you can't describe unless you've been there and done that, to say the least. And so we really appreciate you making time to come on and share with us tonight. It's been awesome.
Thank you so much. I super appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And one last thing we always share with each of our guests is we want to express to you our love. We're so grateful for you as our brother in the Scotland Edinburgh Mission. Thanks for being one that paved the way for those of us that got to come in and continue to separate the wheat from the tares and find those opportunities to really help the people in that wonderful land that we love. So really, again, we love you and are grateful for all that you did in that mission. So thanks, Tyler.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to share in the brotherhood, man. It's cool. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll say cheerio to you, and we'll certainly talk more to you very soon. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, Tyler. Cheerio, man. Bye.
Bye.